I invite you to please stand with me for the territorial song.
Oh, Montserrat, dear motherland, your children raise your standard high in toil and tears to serve you well, a crowning jewel from God's hand. Oh, Montserrat, by nature blessed, to you your children sing. Come, well of all, come, friend of all, to you your people cling.
Let us pray. In the name of God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. Amen. We give your thanks to God for the rest of the past night and for the gift of a new day with all its opportunities of pleasing you. For those of us who slept soundly, we did not know what transpired throughout the night. But you have opened our eyes to see today. It's a day for ministry. It's a day to seek to build your kingdom here on earth. And as we gather here for this handing over ceremony of the solar PV system from the government of Montserrat to Montserrat Utility Limited, we pray, Almighty God, that this ceremony be one of such that will help us to understand that you are God and that you care for each and every one of us. So bless all of us as we gather. Bless our MC, bless all the ministers of government, bless all our engineers, and bless all of those who are responsible for having this ceremony today. And bless all of us to your service as we come to labor in your vineyard. And so we give you thanks, we give you praise for yet another day through Jesus Christ our Lord. And as our Savior taught us, so we pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
You may sit. Premier of Montserrat, the Honorable Donaldson Romeo. Speaker of the Legislative Assembly, the Honorable Shirley Osborne. Deputy Premier and Minister of Education, Health and Social Services, the Honorable Delmore Ryan. Minister of Communications, Works, Energy and Labor, the Honorable Paul Lewis. Minister of Agriculture, Lands, Housing and the Environment, the Honorable David Osborne. Deputy Governor, the Honorable Lindell Simpson. Other members of the Legislative Assembly. Member of the Clergy, Father Vifus. European Union Officer, Mr. Kyle Waldron. Executive of Salt Energy, LLC, Mr. David Call. Permanent Secretaries, Heads of Departments. Head of the Governor's Office, Mr. David Arkley. Board members of the Montserrat Utilities Limited. General Manager of the Montserrat Utilities Limited, Mr. Kendall Lee, and your staff here at MUL. Project Manager, Mr. Owen Lewis. Distinguished guests, a pleasant good morning to all. In 2016, Cabinet's approval of the Montserrat National Energy Policy 2016 to 2030 confirmed Montserrat's commitment and determination in providing key programs within the Montserrat energy sector. To date, we would have also completed the National Energy Strategy and Program of Action 2016 to 2030, completed the drilling and testing of 2 geothermal wells, completed a public-private partnership early market engagement for a geothermal plant, and commenced the preparatory work on the 750 kilowatt solar PV plus battery storage project. The interim report, which was done on the OECS energy sector legal and regulatory framework, found that the national energy policies of the OECS member states are broadly aligned in their objectives and direction and are generally focused on three key areas, namely, introducing renewables to replace expensive and potential insecure supplies of fuel oil, improving the efficiency of the energy sector and the utilities operations, and encouraging energy efficiency by the general public. Montserrat is therefore on target in its planning and approach. As a matter of fact, Montserrat's work in the energy sector is well recognized in the region, and we were able to therefore host the launch of CARICOM Energy Week in November 2018, where we were able to focus on empowerment of youths for the sustainable energy future under the theme Clean Energy, Good Governance and Regulation, Generating Growth and Resilience. Implementing policies and strategies within the energy sector on Montserrat comes with its fair share of challenges that we must deal with, such as the substantial initial cost of renewables, the risks associated with financing and investments in the renewables sector, the evolving need for appropriate legislation and regulations for renewable energy, and the limited technical human resources. Today, this event, to mark the handover of the 250 kilowatt solar PV system to the Montserrat Utilities Limited, is a key milestone in the implementation of the Montserrat's energy policy, a policy that is appropriately themed, the power to change. We also pause today to celebrate the completion of a fairly new power plant, which brought to us a new 1.5 megawatt medium speed genset, a new power station plant, along with new control systems. Montserrat's energy supply was entirely reliant on imported fuels, with electricity on Montserrat at 100% diesel generated. To correct this undesirable situation, the government of Montserrat has begun to take the necessary steps, which includes the investment in this solar PV system, which is now feeding into the generating system of the Montserrat Utilities Limited, reducing fuel usage and the use of diesel generators. Not only is this recent investment of over $698,000 US dollars, or 1.9 million EC dollars, true value for money, but the real significance of today for most of us is that this is the equivalent energy used by about 225 average homes on Montserrat within any given year. This makes all the difference. The new power plant and the completion of this first phase of the solar project not only brings us closer to realizing the policy under which we operate, but will place Montserrat on a more sustainable energy path in the energy sector. Whilst the Ministry of Communications, Works and Labour was responsible for implementing this project, the Ministry of Finance and Economic Management had fiduciary and procurement oversight responsibilities. I therefore invite the Premier of Montserrat, the Honourable Donaldson Romeo, to address us.
A pleasant morning to everyone. Protocol already established. As we're about to witness, today is a milestone for Montserrat. As we formally commission our new 250 kilowatt solar photovoltaic power plant, it's good news to know that it is now on grid, and it represents 10% of our load demand. MUL now has a renewable energy-driven power plant that is capable of carrying about 10% of our peak load. Onward, as we go forward, plans are in place to add a further 750 kilowatt of solar PV capacity with some battery backup. When this is in place, we will have 1 megawatt of solar power PV capacity, which can supply about 40% of our current electricity consumption. We will not stop here, clearly, for as we continue to explore greener energy, like the rest of the world, we will keep an eye on wind, biofuels, electric vehicles, and of course, geothermal. On geothermal, we have already 2 wells that have proven capacity to support our needs, and a 3rd well that has unfortunately met with technical difficulties. However, we are still moving forward to develop this form of green energy through working with partners to bring geothermal power plant in place. Today we celebrate what our government can and must always do when it has adequate funding to execute a project. When we envision, plan, and have adequate funds, as I said, we can and must deliver. Thanks is therefore due to the European Development Fund, EDF 10, for major funding. Other funding was sourced through the Ministry of Finance, and as always, this was supported by DFID. However, we are here mainly because of the hard, persistent work of the Ministry of Communications and Works, the consultants Stantec, and the contractor Salt Energy, all led by Honorable Lewis, which means the plant was successfully completed within the EDF 10 deadline. I want to say special thanks to the project coordinator, Mr. Owen Lewis. He, as I'm aware, is the energy battery backup behind Honorable Lewis. And Honorable Lewis is rightfully called the Minister of Energy, because his energy has brought us, and wisdom has brought us to this point. I was told I had 2 minutes, and I'm going to do just that. Please, today may seem as a small achievement, but it is quite significant. And as I said before, we often speak negatively of projects and project implementation. Today we have a case where funding was provided, adequate funding, and the vision that was had by the government was executed on time and to the standard that I expect of our partners we work with on Montserrat. I would therefore then like to simply say thanks again for all who worked hard to make sure that today's achievement has happened and will continue to benefit the government and people of Montserrat. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier, for your encouraging words and your compliments. Of great significance, this project would not have been possible without funding of over 3 million EC dollars from the EU under the European Union Development Fund EDF 10 program. We also anticipate another 10 million EC dollars under the upcoming phase 2 of this project. We are therefore very delighted to have with us today the European Union Program Officer for Economic and Social Affairs, Mr. Kyle Waldron, to bring us remarks.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Honorable Donaldson Romeo, Premier of Montserrat, Minister Paul Lewis, Minister of the Ministry of Energy, all other distinguished guests, members of the head table, and special invitees, good morning and thank you. It is a great pleasure to join with you this morning to say a few words on behalf of the European Union. We are proud and thankful to be a part of this handover ceremony where the government of Montserrat is transferring the 250 kilowatt solar PV system to the MUL. The European Union remains committed to supporting renewable energy, energy efficiency, and sustainable development as Montserrat and other countries in the region progress towards green economies. As you know, we are committed to support effort that goes towards mitigation of climate change worldwide and every step, small or big, towards our common goal of making peace with our planet. This occasion marks yet another milestone in the country's development, as Montserrat forges ahead with its goal of transitioning from a fossil fuel-based energy sector to a renewable-based energy sector. We know the government has plans to transition its energy system to 100% renewables in the very near future. Whilst this is ambitious, we all can make it into reality, and the government is off to an excellent start. Through this EDF budget support program, the EU is supporting the Montserrat in a significant switch to renewables, increased energy efficiency, and energy reliability. Montserrat has plans for solar power to become a sustainable portion of energy capacity and usage today. We can see these plans being put into action. This 250 kilowatt solar PV system is just the beginning. And the government has plans to install an additional 750 kilowatt PV as the premier identified with the battery storage, which builds resilience into the energy system. Once additional 750 kilowatts is installed, the government will be in its penetration level of 40% renewables, which will be one of the highest penetration levels in the region. You should take high applause to that. The EDF program will also assist the government in its goals to replace conventional street light with LED lighting, solar lighting for road and other infrastructure, and others adjacent to main power lines will also be installed with support from the European Union. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to highlight our appreciation for all of the stakeholders we have been involved in this process to bring us to this point. And I can assure you that the European Union will continue to provide support for the project through our technical and administrative efforts to maintain the momentum the government has built up in terms of implementing this program and increasing the penetration levels of renewables on the grid. Last but not least, I want to specifically thank the government of Montserrat and the Rocky Mountain Institute for it has been instrumental in installation of the 250 kilowatt solar PV system. And I look forward to continuing partnerships with ourselves, the European Union, the government, to making upcoming renewable energy products a success on Montserrat. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. And I want to also thank you for the other work that you've been doing with us on some of the other projects. We have found you to be, one of the executives who we feel that we are comfortable with, and you're always keen to hear our challenges and our issues. And although we know the framework of the EU is quite tight and structured and rigid, you have always found a way to accommodate us. And I just wanted to thank you specially for that. I wish to recognize local subcontractors on the project, High Tech Elec and the Gallery Group, represented here today. Thank you for your work with this project. The engineering, procurement, and construction contractor for this solar project was Salt Energy LLC out of Florida. In March 2019, just last month, we were fortunate in also receiving training from this company, which was imparted to some 33 persons, covering safety and practical design, understanding high voltage, wire and switch requirements, minimizing energy consumption, and other general information on the systems installed. Please, therefore, help me welcome Mr. David Call to bring us brief remarks.
Thank you, Chairperson Mendez, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all today. Salt Energy is honored to have been selected to build the 250 kilowatt power plant for Montserrat. The project is very important to us, just as we know it is for the government of Montserrat and for MUL and for all Montserratians. From the moment we arrived on the island, we have felt welcomed and experienced a great sense of community with the people of the Emerald Isle. With these thoughts in our minds, we embarked on the execution of the project with the intent of building it to our highest standards, just as we would have if it was being built in the Florida Keys with our communities and with our families as the customers. Our team has been greatly supported here by numerous staff members from both government as well as private local contractors. And as a result of the outstanding support team that we experience, we are confident and proud that we have built for you an extremely strong and robust system. Following our successful startup of the system on March 27th, the system has consistently shown that it has performed as intended and beyond. We experienced a very smooth construction phase with absolutely no major hiccups. And this was in no small way due to the local support that I would like to acknowledge now. We would like to express our gratitude to the PWB management and staff, Mr. Patterson and his team, for the many ways they supported us throughout the project. Special thanks also to the MUL team, Mr. Lee and Mr. Ryan, the transmission and distribution management and staff, and the powerhouse operators for helping us every step of the way. Next, I would like to acknowledge the outstanding contributions of our principal contractors, High Tech Electric, Mr. Roland Irish and his team of electricians, and the Galloway Group, Mr. Adrian Galloway, and his skilled team who carried out our civil works. These two organizations were with us on the roofs and in the trenches every step of the way. And the work of their skilled staff was instrumental in moving the project forward successfully while adhering to our very tight schedule. I also want to thank Mr. Owen Lewis, project manager for the government of Montserrat. Owen was both a strict taskmaster and an excellent partner for us. He facilitated all sorts of issues that helped to keep us on schedule throughout the project. Thanks for your tremendous support, Owen. And finally, I would like to thank the MCWL staff and Minister Lewis for their enthusiastic support throughout the project. The broad support we experienced was a real highlight for us, and it motivated us to do our very best every day. Thank you, Minister Lewis, for allowing us to be a part of your dream. Montserrat stands out to us in terms of the vision and commitment of driving towards 100% renewable energy. Realizing this project has been a real pleasure for us to assist you on your journey. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, David, firstly for being with us. And when David and his colleagues were introduced to me by Mr. Owen Lewis in my office, we immediately felt that they were part of us. They were very open. They were interested in what was going on with us. They were enthusiastic about delivering, and they wanted to hear about our challenges. We were able to raise questions that they were open to. We wanted to know about continued maintenance. We wanted to know about resilience during hurricanes. How will we deal with these flat things on the roof? And that was particularly important for us. They were able to share their experiences, and we're happy for that. And we were reassured that in a disaster, how we should manage or mitigate loss for the panels. And particularly important was the training. They wanted to do the training before we even asked. And this is important because when they leave, we want to be in a position to deal with the infrastructure that is now put in place. So I thank you, David, for being with us today and for managing the project all along. Montreat Utilities Limited was the technical support partner to the ministry. The Government of Montreat client engineer was Stantec Consultants out of Barbados. But with the completion of this phase 1 of the solar PV project, we now have in place 824 panels, all of which will now become the responsibility of Montreat Utilities Limited to safeguard and to maintain. Mr. Kendall Lee and his team here at the Montreat Utilities Limited played a leading role in ensuring that this project was successful. We therefore welcome Mr. Kendall Lee, Managing Director of MUL, to address us.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, and a pleasant morning to all. I would like to adopt the protocol already established. This morning, we are marking a significant milestone in the life of Montreat Utilities Limited, and it gives me great pleasure to offer some brief remarks on behalf of the Board of Directors, the management and staff of the company. The milestone we are marking today, or this morning, is the reintroduction of renewable energy generation into the portfolio of the company's electricity generation department. The last time the company utilized renewable energy as part of its generation mix was during the years 1989 to 1995, when it operated two 100 kilowatt Vestas wind turbine machines at St. George's Hill. About 3.5 years ago, a general staff meeting was held to discuss the development of vision and mission statements for the company. The consensus among the staff at that meeting was that the vision of the company should be to become the greenest provider of utility services in the Caribbean. This successful completion of the phase 1 of a 1 megawatt solar PV project, which saw the 250 kilowatt solar PV installation being connected directly to the 11 kV bus at the Braids power plant, represents an important first step in the company's goal of becoming one of the leading green utility providers in the Caribbean. The 250 kilowatt installation was first connected to MUL's electricity grid on the evening of Wednesday, March 27th, with the first full day of production being Thursday, March 29, 2018. We have seen the output of the solar PV installation peak at 280 kilowatts at one point, and this represents almost 15% of the island's peak load, which now stands at 1.9 megawatts. The performance target for this phase of the project was 10%, so the target was exceeded. At this point, we have had 19 full days of operation, and it has produced over 27,000 units of electricity without the burning of imported diesel fuel. So far, it has been observed that the system is producing approximately 1,300 to 1,400 units on average per day. So assuming that this trend continues and we do an extrapolation, we can expect that with the eventual completion of the second phase of the project, and we expect that design work should commence without delay, by the way, the 1 megawatt solar PV installation should realize about 1.9 million units per year, and this would be about 15% of our total annual production, a significant achievement. At this point, I would like to clarify any apparent confusion in the percentages. The 40%, which was mentioned earlier for completion of the project, is 40% of our peak demand or load. This percentage, as I quoted, is actual energy production over the year. This completion of the 250 kilowatt solar PV installation represents the second noteworthy achievement made in the power generation department of Montreat Utilities Limited since the onset of volcanic eruptions. The first being the completion of the new medium-speed diesel power station in November 2017. And this represented a great improvement in the working conditions of the staff here at the plant, who had to labor for many years in outdoor conditions just to provide electricity to the island. The new power plant was designed with the future interconnections of renewable energy power generation plants in mind, specifically geothermal and other spare inputs. The facility was therefore able to easily integrate the 250 kilowatt solar PV installation with the existing power generation equipment. As we leave here to do the tour and blessing in the second part of the ceremony, we will be offering prayers for both the 250 watt solar PV installation and for our new power plant, asking God for protection and success in our operations. As we look to the future beyond the completion of this phase of the 1 megawatt solar and the eventual completion of the second phase, we would be aiming at having additional renewable energy capacity being introduced into the electricity generation portfolio of the department. This would involve not only the development of geothermal, but also wind energy, which is also a very abundant renewable energy resource on this island. The aim of this is to significantly reduce our reliance on expensive imported diesel fuel, which currently is a significant cost burden to businesses and residents on the island and a barrier to economic growth. But the utility would need continued financial support to enable it to achieve further developments in renewable generation. We are not able to achieve economies of scale with a population of under 5,000 people to develop these projects using private capital and afterwards result in the electricity costs being affordable and competitive, which is the ultimate aim. So I end these remarks with an appeal for continued funding support from the government of Montserrat and its funding partners to assist Montserrat Utilities Limited in achieving its goal of becoming the greenest utility in the Caribbean, with the removal of that often used tag of being one of the most expensive electricity providers to the new tag of being one of the lowest cost providers. Finally, there are a lot of persons and entities that we owe a great deal of gratitude for seeing this project through to this point, and this will ably be done later by Mr. Owen Lewis during the vote of thanks. But I don't think Mr. Lewis would be thanking himself in those remarks. So, we would like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Owen Lewis for his invaluable role he has played in this project from its inception. Everyone would agree that he has been the focal point every step of the way. So, Mr. Lewis, we say a very big thank you to you. And with that, I conclude these remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Lee, for your remarks. And just in the event that you thought that I took you down the wrong road with my opening remarks and I didn't set the proper context for you, they say figures tell no lies. So I'm thankful that Mr. Lee could come afterwards and set the figures straight so that we have a total, complete, accurate picture of what is going on the ground. So to someone who really needs little introduction and someone who we regard as the visionary and the driver of this project, to bring us his address and to formally hand over the solar systems to MUL, please help me welcome the Honorable Paul Lewis to bring.
Pleasant good morning to all. Try that again. A pleasant good morning to all. Morning. Oh, you're now awake. I like to accept the protocol already established and just to say that this is a proud moment for the government and people of Montserrat. Montserrat Utilities Limited, our project partners, to witness today a historic moment. After 23 plus years, post-volcanic crisis, clean, green, renewable energy is once again on the national grid. That indeed, integrating renewable energy on the grid is a significant achievement. Let us give Montserrat a round of applause. On taking office in 2014, my first observation, electrical being my background, slightly biased, of course, was that renewable on the grid was restricted to geothermal. It was apparent that we will continue to pursue geothermal, however, with all the factors considered, it was likely to take a long waiting for drilling of wells, surface plant development, and transmission lines before power gets to the grid. The decision was then made to introduce a wider vision to include several renewable energy sources in the mix. After assessing cost, time for development and construction, starting with solar, the development of a utility-scale solar plant became a parallel priority along with geothermal. Solar, as is evident today, is the quickest way to bring relief, and by the way, the most cost-effective way to bring relief to the people of Montserrat. Serious consideration is also given to wind turbine, so we introduced it once more again to the national grid. While this first phase of 250 kilowatt solar plant represents in excess of 10% peak demand energy on the grid, what is even more impressive is that in completing the 1 megawatt plant with battery backup, renewable energy on the grid will produce in excess of 40% of the power peak demand generated, given that we are no longer at 2.5 megawatts peak. We will see even greater reduction on fuel surcharge and great savings for consumers on their electricity bills once the installation of the 1 megawatt solar project is completed. This will result in greater fuel savings, lower fuel surcharge, and a savings on our electricity bills. To put this into perspective, 45% of fuel imported is spent on electricity generation, a yearly average of a whopping $8.4 million, all paid by us, the customers of MUL. After hearing those figures paid by you, the consumers, I am 100% sure you are now all on board with this solar initiative and vision. We now look forward to the quick completion of the 750 kilowatt next phase to follow shortly, taking it to 1 megawatt solar on the grid. This will reduce the burden of consumers, giving them more disposable income to enjoy their hard-earned money of their own choice. The vision to embrace various forms of renewable energy sources is reflected in the National Energy Policy, the Power to Change. This policy was created and approved by the present government. With this comprehensive program is geared to achieving energy security, reducing costs of electricity, and contributing to a greener and healthier environment. Our overall sustainable energy program is focused on renewable energy, energy efficiency, and electric mobility. The mix of renewable energy sources include, but not limited to, solar, geothermal, and wind. Energy efficiency projects include retrofitting of LED street lights, installing of solar street lights, use of LED lights, and energy efficient appliances in commercial and domestic buildings. The installation of electric chargers under the 250 kilowatt project at the main MCWL headquarters building and the mechanic workshop is in preparation for the charging of our first electric car, the Nissan Leaf, expected to arrive on Ireland as part of a pilot program. The pilot will allow and inform on the performance and savings using an electric car for transportation. There is a keen interest, given 47% of fuel imported is consumed by the transportation sector. the mechanics, students, and first responders can look forward to participating in knowledge exchange training workshops on maintaining and responding to incidents. Workshops held for electricians and students on the solar installation 250 kilowatt a few weeks ago were well attended with attendance fully engaged. This government has demonstrated that working with local, regional, international expertise and the European Union funding, Montserrat can boast of a world-class energy policy, strategy, implementation plan, and even more important, implementation of actual energy projects. It is now evident the energy projects financed by grant funds from the European Union as a part of our sustainable energy program are being rolled out successfully. We express thanks to the European Union for the EDF 10 and EDF 11 funding, the European Union for financing projects of this type with real benefits for the people of Montserrat. Let's give the European Union a round of applause. The 250 kilowatts utility scale solar plant, which was integrated onto the grid in March 2019, surpassed its target of 10%, which meant that government of Montserrat met one of the European Union key performance indicators, a condition that allow us to access another tranche of funds from the EU. Montserrat's collaborative approach to achieve energy security consists of several local, regional, and international partners. Mention must be made of the project manager, Mr. Owen Lewis, as the Premier referred to him as the battery backup for Mr. Paul Lewis. Special mention must definitely be made. I did overwork him, and initially I had no money to pay him. So let's give him a round of applause. Mention must be made of the MCWL Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Beverly Menz. I do work her very hard. Ralston Patterson, Felix Bassad, Marissa Allen, Lawrence KB, Alex James, all involved in the implementation, and all the staff of MCWL that make this overall project possible. MUL Managing Director, Mr. Kendall Lee, who sometimes probably get tired of my phone calls, and his staff, Honorable Premier and Minister of Finance, Mr. Donaldson Romeo. The first day when I asked him for $3 million and he asked me, what do I want that for? It took me some work to convince him that a 250 kilowatt solar project was definitely possible, and he trusted my judgment and my ability. Thank you, Mr. Premier. To the Honorable Speaker of the House, Mrs. Shirley Osborne, or Miss Shirley Osborne, seems like I'm predicting something with the missus, but that is good too. And of course, Honorable Deputy Premier and Honorable Minister Osborne, Honorable Claude Hogan. To Mr. Colin Owen, who is FS but also the EU TAO, Ministry of Finance project team and procurement team, Human Resource Department, the Honorable Deputy Governor for her general support and loaning of her staff, which I'm not too sure she'll get back. Physical Planning Unit, Mr. Alvin Ryan, who somehow seemed no longer to be with physical planning. I left physical planning, left it in his hands. He decided to follow my footstep and leave. But if he's following my footstep, indeed, he will be announcing his candidacy for the 2019 general elections. Our local press, regional and international press. Our regional partner, CARICOM, with special mention of Dr. Devon Gardner, Program Manager of the CARICOM Energy Unit, for his support from start to finish. Our international partners include the European Union with EDF 10 and EDF 11 funding, GIZ, RITA, Carbon War Room, Rocky Mountain Institute, IRENA, and Mega Power. This 250 kilowatt utility scale solar project, engineering, procurement, and construction contractor, as mentioned before, is Salt Energy. Client engineers, Stantec, local contractor's high-tech elect, Mr. Roland Irish and his crew. On the electrical side, and Gallery Group, mechanical and civil. Let's give our local guys a round of applause. The government of Montserrat is proud to hand over to Montserrat Utilities Limited the completed 250 kilowatts utility scale solar project for the first phase of the 1 megawatt solar project. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister Lewis, for your address. And of course, we are further encouraged to continue to work hard. Mr. Owen Lewis will come to do the vote of thanks. We give special thanks to Mr. Lewis, the project manager for this solar PV project. Mr. Lewis worked on the fundamental aspects of the project and also government's energy policy. I wish to point that out. He has been involved in a number of solar projects in the region in conjunction with the Carbon War Room and Rocky Mountain Institute Islands Energy Program. Mr. Lewis has worked on various stages of this project from its inception in developing the project concept papers and the business case. He also assisted with the procurement of the engineering consultants, securing the preliminary designs, the installation of the contractor. He has been very instrumental in managing the entire process as it involved developing and maintaining reliable, positive relationships with MUL and other key stakeholders. Mr. Lewis, please come.
Good morning, and thank you, Madam Chair. Adopting the protocol established. I am extremely pleased to have been chosen to give the vote of thanks for this, the 250 kilowatt solar PV project handover ceremony. All project managers imagine what today is going to be like at the beginning of every project. However, not all of us experience days like today, so I'm grateful to a wonderful team. The successful development and implementation of this project involve a team of local, regional, and international participants who all deserve our thanks. Our thanks to our regional and international partners, the European Union, to providing budgetary support to the government of Montserrat via the European Union Development Fund EDF 10 program used for funding this project. We thank you. CARICOM Energy Unit for providing technical support in the form of the PV integration study. We thank you. The Rocky Mountain Institute for providing technical support in the form of project development and implementation advice. We thank you. The International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA, for technical support and advice. We thank you. A number of government ministries and departments played key roles in the successful delivery of this project, namely the Ministry of Finance and Economic Management for their project fiduciary and procurement oversight responsibilities. We thank you. The Physical Planning Unit, Electrical Inspectorate Section for their design, drawings, review, and feedback. We thank you. The Ministry of Communications, Work, Labor, and Energy for their project development, implementation, and administration responsibilities. We thank you. The Public Works Department for their support in aiding us during the construction of this project. We thank you. The 250 kilowatt solar PV project being a utility scale solar project, our thanks to Montserrat Utilities Limited for their technical, operational, supervision, managerial support for the use of their facilities today and over the entire construction duration. We thank you. To the men and women responsible for the actual delivery of this project, the ones that actually did the work, Stantec Consulting Caribbean Limited out of Barbados for their role as Government of Montserrat's client engineer, that's Government of Montserrat Primary Technical Procurement Contract Administration Advisors, we thank you. Salt Energy out of Miami, Florida, the United States, for their role as engineering, procurement, and construction EPC contractors, we thank you. To High Tech Electric Montserrat, for their role as electrical subcontractor, we thank you. To the Galloway Group Montserrat, for their role as civil subcontractor, we thank you. To Mega Power out of Barbados, for their role as supplier of Montserrat's first electric vehicle and for facilitating EV auto technician certified training, we thank you. Our thanks to the participants and guests in this morning's ceremony. Father Vipers, we thank you for your opening prayer. And by the way, Father, you're still on the clock because you have to do the official blessing of the facility. We thank you. To all our speakers this morning, our thanks. To the Premier of Montserrat, the Honorable Donaldson Romeo, EU Representative, Mr. Kyle Walrand, EPC Contractor Representative, Mr. David Call, MUL Managing Director, Mr. Kendall Lee, and for our main speaker, the Minister of the Ministry of Communication, Works, Labor and Energy, the Honorable Paul Lewis. To all of our speakers, thank you. This morning's ceremony was skillfully chaired. Our thanks to Chair Lady Mrs. Beverly Menz, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Communications, Work, Labor and Energy. Thank you, P.S. Menz. To you, the invited guests, our thanks for attending this morning's ceremony and contributing to its success. Thank you very much. To the media in attendance covering this morning's ceremony, our thanks to you, one and all. A ceremony like this morning does not happen without the help of a multitude of people in the background. Our thanks to all who have assisted in the planning, organizing, is, and will continue to assist to ensure that this morning handover ceremony in its entirety is a success. Thank you very much. To one and all, on behalf of the government and people of Montserrat, our heartfelt thanks for making this project the success that it is. Thank you.
Green, clean, sustainable energy, energy efficiency, saving you money. Green, clean, sustainable energy, energy efficiency, saving you money. We got the energy, we got the energy, we got the energy, we got the energy. We want a clean environment that we sustaining, transforming economy, renewing our energy. I am also confident. Use our energy.
Guys, so welcome to the MUL Power Station. I take it that is the first time most of you are venturing in. Yes. So this part is the connection room, I'm told. And this up here are our 6 inverters. So the system was designed to produce a peak of 288 kilowatts DC. And each of these inverters can do 50 kilowatts, so we've got a total of 300. That is important because a lot of times when people design the system, they go cheap on the inverters, so the solar can actually generate more electricity than the inverters can deal with. We did it totally different. We have 300 versus 288, which means about 2 or 3 days ago, out of the theoretical 288 that the system can produce, our high so far has been 284. So, and May is supposed to be the month where we peak. So we are pretty confident from a design and installation that we're actually going to get to the 288. So, David, over to you in terms of some basic, in terms of what we have.
Well, so as Owen said, we start with direct current on the roof of the 3 buildings involved. And so there are ductwork feeders bringing the DC current and conductors from each of those buildings coming into the underground trench here in the switchgear room and feed to those gray junction boxes at the other side of the last 2 inverters. And that feed you see coming in to these wires. So these wires are actually coming from Montevaco right here and bringing the DC power into the inverters. The first 4 are Montevaco, and the conversion to AC, alternating current, occurs inside, and then it travels back to that primary box over there, which combines all of the AC power from all 6 inverters. There it goes back out to a transformer, gets converted to the medium voltage level of 11,000 volts. It comes right back in to the switchgear behind us to connect to the grid.
Straight up. So for the last 17 days, for about 10% of the electricity that we've been using on the island, been from this smooth transition no one knows, which is what we want.
We give you thanks because in your loving wisdom, you brought all things into being and are truly worthy of praise from every creature you have made. And so this morning we want to thank you, God, for this solar plant, and we thank you, God, for the solar system. We thank God for all those who have brought same into completion. We pray, Almighty God, as we go forward, we look forward for one day it will be 100%. And we pray, Almighty God, as we go forward, that this building and this supply will last, that there will be no interruption, power cuttage or shortage, and also that our electrical bills, whenever we have same, will be very, very low, and all of us will be happy as consumers. So we want to thank God for everything, and we pray God's blessing on all who are responsible. And I pray that all of us will value and care, and that it will last for a very, very long time. So going to bless all of us, dear Lord, and bless us to your service as we seek to draw close and closer to you, as we live out our lives in this part of your vineyard. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Green, clean, sustainable energy, energy efficiency, saving you money. Green, clean, sustainable energy, energy efficiency, saving you money. We got the energy, we got the energy, we got the energy, we got the energy. We want a clean environment that we sustaining, transforming economy, renewing our energy. I am also confident, use our energy efficiently, or is your own detriment. So start the campaigning now.